Hey everyone, how's it going? Hope you're doing good. I'm doing great as always. This is my part 2 testing of the FujiFilm GFX100s. As you might have seen in part 1, I used the GFX100s in the studio as I wanted to see what kind of a camera it was like to use in studio with strobes. As a photographer, working in the studio is somewhere I would need to work more on and get better at, so I wanted to see if this camera was viable for that. And maybe, something I might want to pick up in the future as I do more work in the studio. Now, in today's video, what I have done is I've gone out into the street with this camera and shot with my friend B-Boy Jun. We did a little street session down in Tokyo at the Tokyo International Forum. Really beautiful building. It was really nice to go in there with basically nobody there right now. So we took the camera in there and everything we did was with natural light because, in part 1 I used strobes, so I knew they work. Fujifilm works great with bronze color with the little transmitter you can throw in there. But I wanted to see how well it worked in conditions that weren't so perfect as in a studio and out in the street on a rainy day in Tokyo. So now, you might not have seen part 1 of my videos, so just to go over a few of the quick, real, major points of the camera. Like I said, the Fujifilm GFX100s, it is the, predecessor of the GFX100. So it's a bit of a different design. As you can see, one of the major selling points of this camera seems to be the compact size. Very much smaller. I think it's even smaller than my D5. It's also lighter. It's quite light. It's 900 grams, so it's a really nice, light, compact camera. Really good feel, ergonomically wise. I like the handle. The controls are really simple to use. It's a very easy camera to just jump in and start using. The main selling point, I think, of this camera, though, is that it has a 102 megapixel sensor, which is massive. This thing is huge. You can get huge files with it. Basically, the raw files come out to about 200 megabytes. And then converting those into JPEG or shooting JPEG, I'm getting anywhere between 35 and 40 megabytes per file, which is insane because the raw files for my D5 are only ever around 25 to 30, and that's raw. So that's pretty insanely huge files. So yeah, it gives you such a wide, huge image that you can use. And really basically for photographers, what's really great with that is you can then crop for days. You can crop insane amount of the image and still get a really good image for what you want to do. And I think for retouchers in that, when you're shooting portraits like we were doing in the studio, it's nice to have all that detail in the face so you can really nicely clean out any kind of blemishes and that stuff in the face, so you can get in so close, 100% view, you're right in there. You can see all the little marks and things like that. So yeah, amazing camera in that direction, in that way. And one other thing I should mention with this camera that I didn't mention in my part 1 video because it wasn't really important when shooting in the studio with high-speed sync and I was having shutter speeds about 640 or so. But this camera actually has what they call, let me see here, I don't want to get this wrong. They have a 5-axis image stabilization system that provides up to 6 stops of variation compensation. Now that's pretty crazy. 6 stops is amazing. And I mention this because I really noticed this when I was out in the street shooting. And I'll say this again at the end of the video, but internal stabilization on a camera like this is really kind of important, especially when you're shooting at slower shutter speeds, especially because the lens we were using this time, this nice big huge 45 to 100 millimeter lens, is an f4 lens. And where we were shooting yesterday was pretty cloudy and actually kind of dark inside because it was raining outside. So with the f4 lens, I have to slow down my shutter a little bit more than I would normally do, and I don't want to crank up the ISO too much. So having this stabilization actually in the end worked out really great, and I didn't even notice it until I started looking at the images and seeing the lower shutter speed that I was shooting at, because at parts I was shooting at the aperture priority just because. And the stabilization worked great. I'll mention it again, but we were shooting at shutter speeds of about 1/20th of a second, and the images look great. They're really sharp. So no handshake or camera shake or anything when I was shooting. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, so let's I want to show you what we did, and then I'll come back and we'll kind of look at the images and stuff like that. But it was just a fun outdoor shoot with B-Boy Jun. He's a good friend of mine. We get go out and shoot a lot together, and the camera's great. It worked awesome, and I'll show you how it worked, and we'll talk about it at the end. Cheers.
でメスの折り割り多分ちょっと外の方がいい。でもうちょっと俺に胸を。そうそれで。こう。ちょっと顔のアップか、まあこっち見て。はい。 ナイス。完璧。お、ナイス。あ、うん、いいよね。ナイス。で、一回こっち見て。はい。おお。ちょっと上見て。OK です。はい、ワン、ツー、スリー。ナイス、ナイス、ナイス。ワン、ツー、スリー。ナイス、ナイス。今の、綺麗、綺麗。声出たけど。
So yeah, that was our session. We had a really good time. The Tokyo International Forum is a beautiful place to shoot at. Go in and check it out if you can when you're here. A little disclaimer, I don't know the rules about photography in there, so I don't know how much you can get away with. We had no problems at all. Had a couple security guards walk by and just kind of basically smile. So no problems there. When I'm shooting these kind of shoots with a b-boy or b-girl, I'm shooting a lot of portraits, I'm shooting a lot of action, so shutter speeds and that are kind of changing, and I'm changing my settings a lot. The design of the camera, should not become a blockade to your creativity. And this camera, I only used it for a couple days really, and I was, flying with the settings on this, and it was really no issue to change between aperture priority, manual, and double check everything. Really like how this is so big and easy to see. So when you're in a rush and shooting, it's really important to be able to change your settings quickly without any problems, and I was able to do that with this camera. Now, I was moving between manual and aperture priority quite a bit. But we started off with aperture priority just because I wanted to get shooting and I wanted to see what the camera would do in this kind of a situation as far as exposing the images. Now I should mention the lens we were using is an f4 lens, beautiful lens, 45mm to 100. It's an f4 lens though, when I'm usually used to shooting a 1.4 or 2.8 lens. I like primes that are wide open, but this is basically all I could borrow. So yeah, when we were shooting, I had the aperture priority on and I wanted to keep the ISO low. So we were at an ISO of 400. Never really want to crank up your ISO too high. And we started shooting, and at f4, means kind of now we have to bring down the shutter speed a bit. But with the internal stabilization, it really didn't make a difference. And looking at like this one image, I'm at 1/25th of a second, and we bring it up and go to 100% view, and that's pretty tack sharp. That's it's beautiful. You can shoot quite slower shutter speeds and still get really, really nice images that are tack sharp and not blurred at all. So not sure if I could do that with my D5 going down quite that low. I'm quite confident in being able to shoot at lower shutter speeds, but this is really, really nice to be able to use. And I didn't notice it until afterwards. I was checking images, but I was just like, oh wow, we're shooting at really low shutter speeds here. So it's pretty crazy to be able to do that, and the internal stabilization really helped. And when you're shooting on the go in these kind of situations, you just kind of need to be able to have confidence in your camera and use it, and it worked great. So that was awesome. So as we wandered through the Tokyo International Forum, I found a couple spots that I wanted to shoot a bit of an action, like this shot right here. Now, like I said, having on aperture priority, it will bring down the shutter speed. So I had to switch over to manual, super easy, just one little click and I'm on manual. And then I brought up the shutter speed and I think I had to bring up the ISO a bit too. So we were at 1/500th of a second, and then 1250 for ISO. And even then, the ISO, bringing it up was fine. The image is really still very clean. And again, tap sharp with this shot. I should mention, when I was shooting the portraits, I was on continuous mode and using the face recognition for getting the focus on the eye. Working great. I really, really enjoyed using that. It made everything really super smooth. And then when I went to action, what I did basically was, because his movement is so quick, I went to single focus, which is something I do a lot, pre-focused on his face, because basically with his movement here, he's not moving towards me or backwards, he's just moving to the side. Pre-focus on his face, he doesn't move, I shoot, and we're good. One thing with this kind of action sports photography is your camera needs to be on point with the timing of the shutter going when you click that button. I've used several cameras in the past where you click it, you think you're taking the photo, but it actually has a one little bit of a heartbeat before it actually takes your shot. And that can be really difficult when you're not used to it to get photos that are perfectly timed. This kind of an image here, his foot is only straight up in the air for a micro fraction of a second. It's very, very short. And I was shooting on single shot, not using a burst, so I needed to have that timing of my finger and the photo being taken perfect. And I'm really happy to say, looking at the images and shooting it yesterday, this has no delay I could tell. So like 102 megapixel camera with no delay in the shutter, I haven't seen that yet. Like the bigger megapixel cameras I've been using have a bit of a delay, but that can really make or break an important photo in the kind of work that I do with action sports photography. You want to have confidence that when you're pushing that button, the image is taken, like at that exact moment. And I'm really happy to say with this FujiFilm GFX100s that yes, that is what is happening. You're getting that exact moment that you want to get in your shot. Super important for action sports photography. And I think really anytime you want to get a candid moment, maybe you're even a wedding photographer and there's that one moment where your bride or your groom is just a quick smile or a nice laugh and you shoot and you have a delay. And so instead of getting the ha ha ha, you're getting the ha, and you get that moment where they close their mouth. So this is really, really critically important, I think, for any kind of a working person's camera, that you're in the field, you're in the street, you're shooting action, you're shooting movement, you're shooting, say, a wedding, everything's going crazy. You need those moments to be bang on precise, and this does it really well, I found. So I was really, really happy about that for sure. So another thing about this, when you're out shooting in the street, I only had one lens, so there's only so much I could do for zoom, but sometimes, you need to crop. Like you have to crop. I need to crop things that are off on the side, or you just need to get the shot and then move on and work on it afterwards. So with a 102 megapixel camera, this is so amazing that you can just crop for days, like I said. And so when you're out on the street shooting and you need to maybe get a little extra zoom, but you don't have that zoom on your lens that you have, you can crop the image and get right in there and it looks beautiful either way. So one example I'll give here is this shot here. Now this is the after shot. This has already been cropped. And I'm going to go back into my main file here, go to the RAWs, show the ones that I like, and come down here. It should be, so yeah, let's do this. Open it up in Camera Raw. And if we go to crop, so you can see how much I've cropped this image here. It's not a huge, insane crop, but it's still something that on a smaller camera, this might cause a little bit of noise, or you might notice a little bit more of the imperfections in the image. But here, with this kind of shot, I'm even, here, and then we're going to go, just say 100, and look at this. Whoops, went the wrong way. I need a different tool. So wait, 193.2 or whatever. So let's go find Jun's face, and really, 200% on that wide of a shot, and we're up here this close in his face, and I'm happy with that. That's pretty crazy. Go to 100%. That's still, I could crop even geez, if I really wanted to go crazy, I could crop something like this to make it a vertical here, and now we have this. And for any social media, online media, or anything like that we need to pop out images really quickly, this would work. This is fine. This would be a great image for a story on Instagram. This would be a great image for a website that needs a story of Jun and stuff like that. So I've gone from that really, really wide image to this. Like, this is just crazy. Like, if I could go back a couple times, like, this is the original image, and we can go in so much and crop it and use it for a million different things. So like out in the street when you're super busy, like, you know, maybe you're a wedding photographer and you just got to get the shot now that you don't want to miss that moment. You can go back in and crop for days and really nitpick and select the exact composition you want for that image, and you're not going to lose a whole lot of quality. Like, unless you're like 1000%, you just want to get the face, whatever. That's just silly. But yeah, it's, you know, amazing be able to do that with a camera like this, and it really helps when you're, you know, in the street working really quickly. And one other thing, you know, I really didn't need to use it too much in this session, but I really am happy actually that there is a flip out back screen to this camera. You know, I don't have one on my D5, and I lay down a lot when I'm shooting. I'm always laying down in the water or in the dirt or in the sand and trying to get a really low angle. I like the low angles because I'm such a tall person. I want to see an image that I don't see all the time, so I get low. And having this on the back of the camera is so nice. It's such an easy thing to add, and I don't have to lay in the dirt all the time now. I can actually just kneel down and look through the viewfinder and shoot like this. And yeah, it just makes my shooting that I do personally so much better. And I think I really wish every camera that came out now had this. You know, some people are going to maybe laugh at me in the comments about wanting to have a flip out screen on a 102 megapixel $6,000 camera, but why not? Like, if you don't want it, don't flip it out. If you think it's a gimmick, then just don't use it. But I know myself, I get down on the ground a lot. I'm always dirty as heck when I'm done shooting. So having this is really helpful. I'm glad they added it. If they didn't have it, I think it would have been needed. So I'm glad they had it, and it's really nice to have. One last thing about this camera, and I didn't use it too much this time, but I did test it out, was that this has a high-speed burst mode of 5 frames per second. Shooting 102 megabytes of images, a burst mode of 5 is actually pretty good. So I thought I would check it out when I was shooting, and we'll just kind of go back in here with my raw images, and let's find one of the ones where I used. So this is one of the ones where I used a burst mode. Oops, where'd it go? So yeah, we're here. So this is the final image. So this is the final image, but now to show you basically what I did, what we got for the burst. So we have him starting his move, up, up, up. That's the initial shot, and then down, down, down. And you know, not a crazy move. This should be something I can shoot no problem with one shot. But you know, sometimes you're in a rush or you're not confident about your timing, so you want to use burst mode. So having it on the camera is helpful. 5 frames per second. It's not the fastest, you know, like, geez, Sony just brought out something that apparently has like 30 frames per second, but it's only a 50 megapixel camera, but still 30 frames is insane. Not sure I'd ever need that. But with this camera, you're getting 5 frames per second, which it's useful, it's usable. With this, you know, I got the perfect timing here, and it was nice. So yeah, like having a burst mode on a camera like this, you wouldn't really expect it, but it does. So if you're in need of using it, sure, you know, maybe your model's moving around a lot. You want to just get a quick little burst of a couple images, it can be helpful. Saying that, if you're going to be using this burst mode, you need the biggest possible card, the best possible card, and the fastest possible card you can put in this camera. Because if you're shooting RAW, 200 megabytes, quick flash of 5, 6, 10 images, you're getting up in gigs of information that needs to be downloaded onto that card from the buffer right now. I never really had any issues with the camera stopping me from shooting because the buffer was full. That was fine, actually. I was really surprised about that. But then going back and trying to check the images, you know, it's still trying to write a gig of information onto that card. And even my computer, to download a gig of information off my memory card takes time. You know, it's not instant. So you have to have this in mind when you're shooting. To do that faster, get the best card. Get the best card, get the fastest card that you can afford. And even if you can't afford it, get the best card, because it'll save you a bit of a headache when you're doing this kind of shooting. If you're shooting quick shooting for weddings or models or like action sports, having a better card than I had would be nice, because I had a bit of a potato card because I didn't want to buy a card just for this camera, because I have to send it back to Fujifilm today. So sad. I want to play with it more. So yeah, that was our session. Me and B-Boy June had a great time. I had a lot of fun myself shooting with the camera. So yeah, just kind of review, like, 102 megapixel camera gives you a huge image, so much information, like 200 megabytes for a raw file. So that allows you to, crop for days like I showed. We can really, really crop in there. We can crop in a lot more. And you still get a great looking image for a lot of different things useful out there. Camera's light, 900 grams is super light for this kind of camera. Easy to use, ergonomics are great, the controls are simple, super easy. If you've ever picked up a camera and used it for more than a day or two, you can use this camera super easily. The continuous focus was great when we were shooting the portraits, and the internal stabilization really helped when we were shooting this dark area with an f4 lens, because I didn't want to bring up the ISO too much. So shooting with a lower shutter speed of like 1/75 of a second, 1/20th of a second, and that seemed to work. Seemed to have crisp images. So great, awesome about that. Yeah, I don't know what else I can say about this camera other than I personally would like it. I would like to use it. I would like to shoot with this. Slower shooting sessions that I have with models for like, New Era, things like that, doing portraits of Red Bull athletes, things where I'm not, maybe like a breakdance competition. I would prefer something with a higher shutter burst mode kind of thing, like my D5. But for 50 to 60% of the work I'm doing now, this camera would be really fill a hole in what I'm feeling with my work right now. I think I mentioned this in part 1 as well, but as a professional photographer, you use your equipment as you use it, and you beat it to the ground, and you go to the extremes of what that camera can do. But you'll come to a point in your work where you're like, okay, wait a minute, these strobes aren't doing as well as I would hope they would do. They're not doing as good as the images that I want to shoot, so I upgrade my strobes like I did with my Broncolors. It's an investment. They've made me money since I bought them, for sure. Now my D5, I've used it for, 5 or 6 years. It works great. I could still use it for another couple of years as long as the shutter system doesn't destroy itself. But with the work I'm doing now, with more studio portraits, more fashion, more things that are being used as posters, more megapixels will help me in my job. And I think they will get me more work as I choose it and get out the high quality images that I can get with this kind of camera. So if you're listening, Fujifilm, maybe we should talk. I don't know. Maybe we can do something together with this kind of system. I would love to see how it would improve my work and what kind of cool images I can get with this in the future. That's about it. If you have any questions or comments, maybe I missed something that you have a question about, let me know down below in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe if you like. Like I said, I'm up to about 360 subscribers right now, which is amazing. I've been doing this for about a year now, just for fun, but it's been a lot of fun. Like I said, it's been fun. So cheers. Thanks a lot. Hope to talk to you soon.